Hello guys and welcome to this video. It's been a while since I've last uploaded and I'm finally taking the time to go over the games that I've played in the last SPL in ADV. So I'm gonna use the method I was using in my earlier video, where I first go over the team that I brought and that I built, and then I will go over the game itself with a play-by-play analysis, explaining my choice first in the builder and then in the game, and hopefully you can learn from it or find something interesting. So I'm gonna spend the first part of the video by going over the team, and what I will do is first describe the idea of the team overall and how it came to me. And then I will go over each Pokemon individually to explain the spreads and the movesets before jumping into the game. So this was the team that I brought in my first game of the season against CyberOdin from the Team Raiders. When I was testing on the ladder before SPL itself, just testing some teams, I ran into someone who turned out to be a linear, by the way, who was using a dual spin team with Fortress and Claydol, and I immediately noted down the ID because it just sounded pretty nice and innovative to me. With Claydol spinning, I could use Fortress without a Pursuiter, because they tend to go together since you wanna remove Gengar for Fortress spinning. But with Claydol taking the spinner spot, you don't really need a Pursuiter anymore. And now Fortress can also technically go for more anti-spinners move if you want. For example, I am not using Rapid Spin on this team, so I could just use 3 attacks. This felt like a good idea against Odin, and I put the team together, tested it on the ladder, and it was working pretty well, so decided to bring it to the game. One of my framework when using Fortress or Skarmory, but especially Fortress, is that I like to pair them with a Wisher, so that's why there is a Jirachi, and a good mixed wall, especially Fortress with the 4-time weaknesses to fire, and usually like finding itself in defensive structures. You can be quite weak to mixed wall breakers, so I'm trying to incorporate things like Milotic or Rich Jirachi, SPL Zapdos alongside Fortress for this reason. In this case, Jirachi was used because it gave me the team a bit more pacing than Blissey, being immune to Sand. I also provided a solid rock resist alongside Claydol, because I don't like Claydol to be the only rock resist. I find it pretty weak against Dita and Aerodactyl as a result. Also, I think it's time to go over the moveset. Yeah, and I will go later over the synergy. So, in the lead slot, I led with Tyranitar, 4 attacks, max bulk, big AC Tar as it is known in the ADV community. Usually, I like Pursuit, while most people use Pursuit alongside Fortress, but like I explained just now, I also have Claydol to spin, so don't need Pursuit Tar this much. And I like the wall breaking potential of 4 attacks, max special attack Tyranitar. So went with it. On top of it, max bulk Tyranitar is often a soft check to many Pokemon. Sorry, I think, yeah. Yeah. It's a soft check to many Pokemon like Celebi, Jirachi, Zapdos. You can also often take a hit from opposing Tyranitar in Metagross and slam them with your move of choice. So yeah, very solid set. You can really never go wrong with it. In the second slot, Jirachi with a physically defensive spread. The reason I went with it over SPF here is because my Zapdos was SPF, and as a result, I wanted my Jirachi to be able to deal with Swampert, especially like Mixpert was quite weak to it. And yeah, max def Jirachi, like this, can tank 2 Earthquake from Swampert and Wish stall it. Can also help against non-boosting Tyranitar. That's pretty much it, honestly. Didn't feel like I was needing the especially defensive spread, because between Roar Zapdos, Aerodactyl, and Max Bulk Tyranitar, I can handle most special attacker. So I'd rather be more solid on the physical side here with Jirachi. Otherwise, it's a pretty standard set. I feel like I need Wish Tech here to Toxic Stall things like Pro Attacks Titar and Swampert. So that's why I am not using those coverage Jirachi, like Wish 3 attacks that we are seeing these days, popularized by Linear. Then I have the Spiker Fortress. Like I said, I like Wish support with it, so I can use it like more liberately. In this case, I was using HP Ghost, but I prefer HP Bug on this fortress in particular because it's stronger against defensive Starmie and Claydol, and even Celebi in a pinch. But I'm not gonna lie, HP Ghost was a player-specific option because Odin is known to use a lot of Gengar, and often foregoing Will-O-Wisp for Hypnosis on them, so I was hoping to catch Gengar on the switch with HP Ghost with it. Also, it can still deal some damage against offensive Starmie and Claydol, so it's not entirely terrible. No Rapid Spin because Claydol is taking the defensive duties. Explosion, HP Bug or Ghost in this case, and Earthquake give me a tool in pretty much every Spike-centric matchup. I have Earthquake for Magneton, HP Ghost Bug for Starmie Claydol, Explosion for overall utility because it's a very strong move, and Spikes because it spikes. Then I have Claydol, very good defensive synergy with Jirachi by the way, helping against fighters. It's pretty standard. I am not going for an offensive spread here because it's like my only resist to Edgequake, I would say. I just prefer the defensive versatility here, honestly. I have Spikes anyway to help me get some 2KO against like Titar with Earthquake. The spread has nothing special. I don't really remember what the benchmarks do. Yeah, sorry about that. I just remember that the special attack is to 2KO some Gengar in Sand with Psychic. I like to keep the speed for Explosion, some attack investment to pack a little more punch with Earthquake against Titar, and Explosion in general. Yeah. Some speed F to help against Electrics too, because I do not have the best matchup against Electrics. Since I have to like sort of soft check them between my speed F Zapdos, Jirachi, and Titar, but I'm never fully protected, especially once they start T-waving my stuff. So Claydol pivoting and taking a bit less from HP Grass, or Ice, usually Grass, with the speed F is pretty nice. The speed F is definitely useful against Gengar because Gengar is a threat to this team, the Will-O-Wisp variants. I do not like Refresh Doll in general, and I felt like I could use Explosion here because I have Wish Jirachi to keep it earthy if need be against the Spike-centric team. Then I have Speed F Zapdos. Speed F Zapdos, pretty great in general, great defensive synergy with Jirachi too. I believe... So, I do not really like Res Zapdos in general because Res Zapdos is very easy to abuse and a bit hard to wake up. But with Jirachi, I do not have to click Rest as much as I would have. So it's mostly a filler move, but it's pretty useful in defensive matchups, and especially to like stall Wish Protect Jirachi, which is a bit hard to get past with my team, especially if it gets a status against Tyranitar. I do not want to go 2-2 with it with my own Jirachi. Well, I would rather avoid risking a burn. So Zapdos taking on Jirachi one-on-one helps. Also, with Rest, I can actually restall Ice Beam Swampert with this spread too. So you tank 3 Ice Beam from no investment Swampert. Always useful. You take a lot less from things like Zapdos, Blaze's Ice Beam, even Starmie. Like, you always tank to Ice Beam from offensive Starmie, with otherwise a bit of a threat, but Aerodactyl helps, obviously. I didn't feel like I needed the offensive investment here. I really like Roar Regenerar too, very good with spikes. It means that some Pokemon like Blaze and Celebi can't just always switch on you. You just roll them and rack up spikes damage to help soften them up for Tyranitar or Aerodactyl in the late game. Roar is actually pretty good too as an anti-cheese factor. Not that I was expecting Odin to cheese, but I always like having the Roar safety against things like CM Celebi, SD Celebi too, which can be quite threatening to my team because I do not have a lot of attacking power at the start of the game. And it helps to not over-rely on Aerodactyl to deal with those Pokemons. And then in the final slot, I have Aerodactyl. So the main thing to notice here is I'm running HP fighting over the traditional HP flying or HP bug. I did not feel like I really needed HP flying here, or even bug, because I have enough tools against fighters between Zapdos, Claydol, and even physically defensive Jirachi plus the spikes from Fortress. However, when testing the team, I found that I had some issues with DD Tyranitar, especially with Lumberry. Claydol isn't a really good check to it. If you run offensive Claydol, you are 2KO'd by HP Bug. And if you run defensive Claydol like I'm doing, Earthquake doesn't always 2KO Tyranitar. So it can dance pretty safely on Claydol. And if it gets to 2 Dragon Dance against my team, I just get swept, because I do not have some things like Swampert to take on +2 T-Tar. So I found that my play against DD T-Tar was often to just hard Aerodactyl and HP fighting it, sometimes taking it by surprise. And that's pretty much it. Let me check my notes to make sure I didn't forget anything. Yeah, Spikes plus Roar Zapdos and Vortex T-Tar is pretty good early game or mid game to dish some damage. And then between Boom Fortress and Aerodactyl, I have a lot of tool to clean games. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Again. Yeah, so I think I'm just gonna jump into the game. It's a pretty it's not very standard actually. You don't often see Fortress and Claydol, but it's a TSS, you know. TSS with Vortex T-Tar and Aerodactyl to round things up. I like that team a lot when I was testing it. Okay. Now to go into the actual game. By the way, when we played, I believe our teams were tied. If I remember correctly, it was 3-3. Okay. So I like Tyranitar. Oh, by the way, the nicknames, I'm not gonna really bother explaining them, but I use nicknames given by my subs on Twitch. So if you ever... I always use nicknames in ADV too. You wanna hide your Pokemon with beat up Duckshrow if you're using it. So if you ever want me to use your nickname, feel free to sub to my Twitch channel. As for the game itself, I led Tyranitar and Odin led Zapdos. So with Vortex Tyranitar in this matchup, you often feel safe to Rock Slide, right? Because Zapdos doesn't really want to stain on T-Tar. They switch out. A lot of Zapdos carry Baton Pass, so for this reason I don't always like to Focus Punch. Because the focusing part of the move is gonna show up before the Baton Pass. So if they have something like Gengar or Celebi, they can go into it safely, or even Claydol. Not to mention they already find your movesets as a result. So I prefer, if I feel like predicting, I like to click Earthquake, because they pretty much always go to the Rock Resist or Claydol. Focus Punching Claydol isn't that useful in my opinion. Meanwhile, if they go to Fortress, if they go to Metagross or Swampert, Earthquake dishes a bit more damage. And also you get to hide your movesets. I always try to hide information if I can. So yeah. So I decided to click Earthquake for this reason. We can see the Zapdos bad on passing, and it goes to Metagross, and I catch it with Earthquake. So I already do a FT 57%. Pretty nice. This is not defensive Metagross. Offensive takes about that. No leftovers. So I go to my Fortress because since it's leftovers less, could be Choice Band, but could also be Lum because when I was scouting Odin, I noticed that he was using a lot of Agility Lum Metagross. Not to mention that this team is very reliant on spikes, since I like a bit of offensive pressure. So having a spikes ASAP is pretty nice. Metagross is a good point of entry for Fortress. So I go straight to it. The Meteor Mash is on the switch. This is not Choice Band damage, by the way. 20% is not Choice Band damage. You get an attack raise too. A bit annoying, not gonna lie, because at this point, the Metagross not having leftovers and being weakened mean my Fortress could have get the spikes and even kill it with Earthquake. So he decides to Earthquake, it does a very nice 40% for him. At this point, I already do not have the best Metagross answer because Zapdos still takes quite a bit from Meteor Mash. And my Jirachi, well, it's max Fist Def. It's okay against unboosted Metagross, taking upward to 50 from Earthquake, but against +1 I'm taking way too much. So I'm getting my spikes first. And I know I'm gonna revenge kill Metagross if he doesn't switch out. And he doesn't switch out, he clicks Meteor Mash again. I click Earthquake. The reason I clicked Earthquake is because I wanted to revenge kill Metagross without going to Aerodactyl. I don't like going to Aerodactyl early because you often have to lock yourself into an obvious move, plus you're already revealing your cleaner. So I wanted to have Metagross in Zapdos range in particular. So that's why I Earthquaked on this turn. At this point, I was contemplating switching and keeping Fortress. However, he revealed leftovers less Metagross plus Zapdos lead. I'm inclined to believe his team isn't really defensive and doesn't even necessarily have a spinner. So I don't mind sacking Fortress at this point. Not to mention that even if he has a spinner, as long as his team is offensive, I do not really need the spikes to beat him. Because spikes is mostly needed to break defensive cores. But if I'm not really facing a defensive team, that's fine. And I'd rather keep my Pokemon earthy. Fortress is gonna be hard to wish back at this point anyway, especially against offensive teams, so I decide to just sack it. He goes for another Meteor Mash, by the way. Could have tanked this one, but whatever. So at this point, my revenge killer, this Metagross, would be something like Jirachi or Zapdos. Decide to go Zapdos, it's a bit harder to switch in, rather than Jirachi. He sacks Zapdos, he sacks Metagross, which makes sense too because, well, we'll see later why, especially, but Metagross at 8% with the Spikes down was gonna be hard to make use of anyway. So he goes to his own Zapdos afterwards. You do not see it, but I can tell you based on the sand damage that he's faster than me. My Zapdos is quite fast, currently it's sitting at 280. So the fact that he's faster than me makes me believe he's offensive Zapdos at this point. It's pretty rare to see defensive Zapdos like I am using with this much speed. As a result, I go to my Tyranitar. Tyranitar was my best bet in my opinion because I don't like using Claydol here. Even if I get Claydol on an immunity, Claydol doesn't really threaten anything back at this point, and it's much easier to abuse. Meanwhile, Titar, if he decides to Baton Pass, well, it's not a problem because I'm at full life, so I'm not threatened by Doug yet if it's Zap Doug, and I get to go on the offensive. Plus, even if Titar takes damage, I can always switch it back up with Jirachi. Zapdos doing 40 against max HP Tyranitar is another confirmation that he's offensively invested. Pretty sure that Steam hits Zapdos damage too. So it goes Jirachi, he goes Kamori. This time I decided to use Rock Slide because Metagross was gone from the game. So it's possible that he has another Rock Resist, but even if it was the case, I would have found out this way, which is good information for the Aerodactyl sitting in the back. This time he goes Kamori to get his spikes up. Rock Slide doing 36. It's time to beat him down. That's what I do with Focus Punch on the spikes. Doing 45. It seems it doesn't. At this point, we can safely assume that it doesn't really have a good switch into Tyranitar anymore, because he's just sacking Skarmory for another spikes. If he had Swampert, he probably would have switched in. So I killed the Skarmory with Rock Slide here. It's looking pretty good for me. You may notice something interesting. I'm gonna take 2 seconds to explain it. Another reason why he decided to be a bit reckless with Skarmory is that he already killed Fortress, so in his mind, he's definitely thinking that he doesn't have to worry about the Spinner anymore. That's actually a nice threat of using Fortress with Claydol, because you can play recklessly with your Fortress, and maybe your opponent is gonna play recklessly with his Spiker if he gets the Fortress down or if he kills it, because he's probably thinking, well, I've taken care of his spinner, so I can just get rid of my spiker at this point. My spikes are gonna keep up. What he doesn't know, obviously, is that I have a Claydol in the back, so I can always erase those spikes later, especially now that Skarmory is dead. At this point, he sends Dugtrio on the revenge kill. Something worth noting is that I think I could have tanked this Earthquake from Dugtrio, but he gets the roll and kills me. Okay, I'm gonna explain my choice here. So I had 2 options at this point. Well, 3 options, but I don't wanna send Aerodactyl yet. My options are to send Claydol and Spin, or to send Zapdos and attack. I took quite a bit to think about it. I felt like spinning wasn't particularly useful because spinning just gives him the opportunity to go on the offensive, and based on the way he's been playing and the team structure so far, I can like pinpoint that his team is quite offensive. So rather than trying to take care of the game state with spikes, the board state, I would rather go further on the offense and create a situation where my Aerodactyl can clean up the field. Also, it's safe to assume at this point that it doesn't really have a good Zapdos switch-in, because earlier, when I killed his Metagross with my Zapdos, he sent his Zapdos back against mine. So I know it doesn't really have a good Zapdos switching at this point. And Zapdos is pretty free against Dugtrio, so rather than sending Claydol and clicking Spin and just giving him offensive momentum, I would rather send Zapdos and further my lead offensively. I can always spin later anyway. I'm in no rush right now. Not to mention that I have literally 3 Pokemon immune to spikes. It's only Jirachi, which has Protect, and is immune to Sand, so really no rush to spin. So that's why I send Zapdos. I'm trying to catch the switch in here, so I'm clicking T-Ball first because I have nothing to fear from Dugtrio anyway. He's deciding to stay in, further like confirming my thought at the time that he was quite weak to Zapdos. At some point, I know he's just gonna sack the Dugtrio, so I click Hidden Power. I'm going back to T-Bolt to catch something on the switch. Maybe he would try to keep Doctor as a spike sap, but he really doesn't have anything. Oh, by the way, gonna pause real quick to mention that Roar on Zapdos is not only good at countering cheese, but it's also good at preventing any setup opportunities like Lum Tyranitar. Lum would protect it from T-Wave if I were to use T-Wave, but Roar is just better, straight up better in this situation. Even late game, Sub CM Jirachi, DD Tyranitar, CM Celebi, even DD Ments, just roll them away and make sure you can clean with Aerodactyl or like take care of it with Jirachi. So I think at this on this turn, yeah, I just finish the dug off, and he sends his Zapdos again, confirming once again that he really doesn't have a good Zapdos switching on this team. So now that he sends Zapdos, I can actually go Claydol, and you see the difference between going Zapdos first instead of Claydol is that I actually remove the Ductrio now. If I send Claydol, after Ductrio killed Tyranitar, I might have been able to spin first, but Ductrio would still be alive and threaten my Jirachi. So now removing Ductrio, I know my Jirachi is much safer. He click it on power here and does a nice 40 while I get the spin off, knowing that I can pivot against Zapdos much better with Jirachi at full health. He does a good play here, so he predicts the switch and Baton Pass for offensive momentum as I go to Jirachi. And this is probably the biggest turn of the game, so I'm gonna take a little bit of time to explain what's going on. Even though I've been ahead the whole time, the situation is a bit risky here because he sends Tyranitar, and as you can see at the end of the turn, it doesn't get leftovers. So it's safe to assume, considering the offensive nature of this team, that it's DD Tyranitar with Lumberry. And as I explained in the team builder part, I'm quite weak to it. Especially now that Claydol is at 66, there is no way I'm gonna be able to tank an HP bug if I let him set up twice. To discourage the Tyranitar from setting up freely on Jirachi, I do have Protect and Toxic. But he is Lumberry, so even clicking Protect Toxic once isn't gonna help. There is also the Nightmare situation where he dodges one Toxic, meaning that he always gets 2 DD in this case, and as I explained, DD Tyranitar getting to +2 just straight up sweeps me. So I do not want to risk losing to Toxic Miss, not to mention that even if I manage to Toxic the Titor after the Lumberry, I would have to pivot around it to avoid losing too many team members to Titor, so it's not like a safe way to handle it. And there is still a back Pokemon that I could still be weak to. So I know he's gonna click DD here, there is no way he doesn't click, he clicks anything else. And there is for sure 0 way he clicks a move that can kill Aerodactyl. So as explained earlier in the builder, the way to prevent Tyranitar to sweep me in the situation was to slot HP fighting on Aerodactyl. And it also has good synergy with Jirachi, because like the obvious move to threaten Jirachi here is to Earthquake if he has it, or even click a fire move, which is quite uncommon on a non-leftovers Tyranitar. So I decided to go straight to Aerodactyl. Another good reason to go Aero here is that I force, even if he... You see, if he stays in, I kill it with HP fighting. And if he scouts for HP fighting, the Tita took spikes damage and it's gonna take another round of spikes later. Which is gonna always make it die to 2 Earthquake from Claydol. And always keeping in HP fighting range, not to mention gonna help against Zapdos T-Bolt even. Because DD Tyranitar with Lum often has 0 bulk. So even Zapdos can T-Bolt it and then phase it away. And then at this point, after a T-Bolt, it's in Rockside range from Aerodactyl, but yeah. So this is why I decided to go Aerodactyl. I click HP fight, he decides to stay in, and he just dies. At this point, not gonna lie, I was pretty happy because like that's literally put that tech on my team for this situation. I tested it, it worked in test. I played the game, it actually comes, it actually turns out to be useful in the game itself too. Felt very satisfying. Something else to mention too is that HP fighting doesn't always kill some DD Tyranitar depending on their bulk, but one round of spikes damage helps a lot to get in kill range, so I get to keep my Rodactyl. At this point, he sends Suicune. I do have my SPL Zapdos at full life to take on Suicune. I even have Roar, just in case it's Crocoon. So I could always phase it away and make sure my Zapdos is against it on a fresh sleep cycle. I even have Boom Claydol to clean the endgame. So I go straight to Suicune, to Zapdos. Another thing worth mentioning here is that remember when I showed my Zapdos spread, I did show my... I could actually go back to it real quick because I didn't really explain it much. I was sped up with a lot of speed investment, and basically 280 is very useful to outspeed offensive Suicune, modest Moltres, which is the standard, because my team is quite weak to Moltres, so having the... being able to outspeed it with Zapdos is quite clutch. It outspeed the offensive Suicune and most fighters too. So very nice to get that one T-Bolt off before getting them in arrows range always. And in this case, I could theoretically be in a bad situation if it's if the offensive Suicune, if this was offensive Suicune and it would outspeed my Zapdos, because most SPL Zapdos do not run enough speed for offensive Suicune. Then Ice Beam Crit or Freeze would allow the Suicune to go on a rampage pretty much. But my Zapdos being faster means that I do not risk anything by switching hard on it because I'm sped up, so I literally cannot die to Ice Beam even crit. And I get to get a T-Bolt off, which I do. I do a FT51. Ice Beam doesn't even come close to killing thanks to the sped up investment. He switches in Zapdos. Doing a FT50, I know that Double Edge Aerodactyl is gonna kill it, and at this point the game is over. I couldn't even lose to something like Agility Zap. Not to mention that I still had Boom Claydol too, like, even if it was... even last Agility would lose to Jirachi or even Boom Claydol. And yeah, that's pretty much how the game ends. I tried to go over everything. I hope I was clear enough. The team worked like perfectly for this matchup, not gonna lie. Fortress was quite good to take on Metagross earlier without weakening my team members. Getting a nice spikes off to make sure Tita always died to HP fight, and even making sure Suicune could be handled between Zapdos and Aerodactyl. Beside that, not much to say honestly. Everything worked, even the tech HP fighting, which was very satisfying, like I said earlier. So yeah, hope you enjoyed. If you have any question or if any remark regarding what I said, feel free to mention it in the comments and I will try to answer. And yeah, I will go over every games that I've played in SPL, so there will be 8 of them. Those will be posting, will be posting on the channel in due time. Until next time, take care guys, thanks for listening, and see ya.